Hi, my name is Sarah, and I never expected to die at the age of 35. I was a wife, a mother, and someone who thought I had my whole life ahead of me. But everything changed the day I was diagnosed with leukemia. Even now, it feels strange to say those words out loud. Diagnosed with leukemia. It didn't seem real at first, almost like it was happening to someone else. But it was real, and it turned my life upside down in ways I could never have imagined. It all started with little things. I was tired all the time, more tired than I'd ever been before. I blamed it on life, working, taking care of my family, trying to keep up with everything. I'd get bruises on my arms and legs, but I didn't think much of it. Then came the fevers. They were small at first, just enough to be annoying. But over time, they started coming more often, lasting longer. I tried to push through it, convincing myself it was just a bug, or maybe stress. One evening, I was sitting at the dinner table with my husband and our 2 kids. We were laughing about something silly, one of those moments that feels so ordinary but so perfect. Suddenly, I felt a wave of dizziness hit me. My vision blurred, and before I knew it, I was on the floor. My husband rushed to my side, panic written all over his face. I tried to laugh it off, but deep down, I was scared. The next day, he insisted I go to the doctor. I remember sitting in the cold, sterile examination room, swinging my legs like a nervous kid. The doctor came in with that practiced smile, the one that tries to put you at ease. She ran some blood tests, said it was probably nothing, and sent me home. But then the phone call came. It was late at night, and my heart sank when I saw the number on the screen. Sarah, the doctor said, her voice careful, measured. We need you to come back in tomorrow. We found something in your blood work, and we need to run more tests. I barely slept that night. My mind raced with every possibility, every worst-case scenario. The next morning, I sat in her office, clutching my husband's hand as she explained what they had found. You have leukemia, she said, her words hanging in the air like a storm cloud. I don't know how long I sat there staring at her, trying to process what she had just said. My husband squeezed my hand, his grip tightening as if he were trying to hold me together. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. I couldn't. Not yet. What does this mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It means we need to start treatment right away, she said. You have a fight ahead of you, but we'll do everything we can. A fight. That's what it was. From that moment on, every day felt like a battle. The chemo started almost immediately, and with it came a whirlwind of side effects. The nausea was unbearable. I lost my hair, my energy, and at times, my hope. There were nights I couldn't sleep because the pain was so intense, and mornings when I couldn't even get out of bed. But the hardest part wasn't the physical pain. It was watching my family try to stay strong for me. My kids would sit by my bed, trying to smile, trying to act like everything was normal. My husband would whisper prayers when he thought I was asleep. And my mother, bless her heart, would call every day, her voice steady, but her words trembling with the weight of her worry. I tried to stay strong for them. I told myself I could beat this, that I had to beat this. But as the weeks turned into months, I felt myself slipping. My body grew weaker, my spirit dimmed. There were moments when I didn't think I could take it anymore, when I wanted to give up. One night, I was lying in my hospital bed, the room dark except for the faint glow of the machines monitoring my every heartbeat. I turned to my husband, who was sitting in the chair beside me, his head bowed in prayer. What if I don't make it? I whispered. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears he refused to let fall. Don't say that, he said, his voice cracking. You're going to make it. You have to. But what if I don't? I asked again, my voice breaking. What happens then? He didn't have an answer. None of us did. That night, as I drifted in and out of sleep, I found myself praying. I hadn't prayed in a long time, not really. But in that moment, I poured out my heart to God. If you're there, I whispered, please give me a sign. Give me something to hold on to. I don't know how much more I can take. What I didn't know was that my prayer would be answered in a way I could never have expected. That night was the beginning of something I still struggle to put into words. It was the night everything changed. It was the night I began to die. And it was the night I met him. That night, as I lay in the hospital bed, my body grew heavier and my breathing slowed. I could hear the faint beeping of the heart monitor, each sound growing more distant, more hollow. My husband's hand was wrapped around mine, but even that began to feel far away. I wanted to hold on, to fight like I'd promised, but something inside me whispered that it was time to let go. I was so tired. Tired of the pain, tired of the struggle, tired of pretending I wasn't afraid. The last thing I remember was the sound of my husband whispering, "I love you, Sarah," before everything went dark. But the darkness didn't last. At first I thought I was dreaming. I felt weightless, like I was floating, and for the first time in months, there was no pain. The world around me was quiet, peaceful, and warm, as though I were being wrapped in a blanket of light. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the hospital anymore. I was standing in a place I can only describe as otherworldly. The light wasn't coming from the sky. It was everywhere, surrounding me, filling me. It wasn't just light. It was love. Pure, overwhelming, all-encompassing love. I looked down at myself, and for a moment I didn't recognize what I saw. My body was whole again. I was strong, vibrant, free of the disease that had ravaged me. I touched my face, my arms, my chest, and let out a soft laugh of disbelief. The hospital, the machines, the tubes, they were all gone. I was free. Then I heard it. A voice, gentle yet powerful, calling my name. Sarah. I turned toward the sound, and there he was. Jesus. I knew it was him the moment I saw him. He didn't need to say who he was, I could feel it. His presence radiated a love so profound that I dropped to my knees, tears streaming down my face. I couldn't speak. All I could do was cry, overwhelmed by the sheer beauty and power of his presence. He stepped closer, his expression filled with kindness and understanding. "Do not be afraid," he said, his voice soothing every fear, every doubt I'd ever carried. "You are safe here." "Am I dead?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. He nodded gently. "Your body rests, but your soul is here with me. There is something I must show you, Sarah. Something you must share when you return." "Return?" I asked, my heart racing. "You mean I'm going back?" "Yes," he said, his gaze steady. "Your time is not yet complete, but before you go, you must see." Before I could respond, the light around us began to shift. The warmth and peace of his presence faded slightly, replaced by a heaviness that pressed against my chest. I felt the ground beneath me change, no longer soft and warm, but cold and unyielding. When I looked up, I saw a sight that shook me to my core. There were people, thousands, maybe millions, standing in long lines. They were silent, their heads bowed as they shuffled forward. Each person approached a station where something was placed on their foreheads or hands. At first, it seemed harmless, even routine. But as they stepped away, I saw the change. Their faces went blank, their eyes empty, as if the very essence of who they were had been taken from them. I turned to Jesus, my voice shaking. "What is this? What's happening to them?" "This is the mark of the beast," he said, his tone heavy with sorrow. "They are being deceived, Sarah. They believe this mark will bring them safety, prosperity, and peace, but they do not understand what they are giving up in return." I watched in horror as more and more people lined up, oblivious to the truth of what was happening. "Why can't they see it?" I asked, tears streaming down my face. "Why don't they know?" "The deception is great," Jesus said. "The mark will not come as something evil. It will appear as something good, something necessary. Many will take it willingly, thinking it is the solution to their problems. But once they accept it, they lose what they cannot regain: their souls." I felt my knees buckle as I fell to the ground, overwhelmed by the weight of what I was seeing. "Is there no hope for them?" I asked. my voice barely above a whisper. "There is always hope," he said, his voice filled with both love and urgency. "That is why you must return, Sarah. You must warn them. Tell them to stay close to me, to trust in my word and not the promises of the world." Before I could respond, the scene shifted again. This time I was standing before a massive, glowing book. Its pages shimmered with golden light, and I could see names written in radiant letters. Jesus placed his hand on the book and looked at me. "This is the book of life," he said. "Here are the names of those who have chosen me, who have remained faithful. Their souls are safe." I stared at the book, my heart pounding as I recognized some of the names. Family members, friends, people I had known throughout my life. But then, one name stood out, glowing brighter than the rest. "Donald Trump?" I read aloud, confusion evident in my voice. Jesus nodded. "He has a role to play in the days to come," he said. "Pray for him, Sarah. Pray for all who will stand against the deception. The battle ahead will not be easy." I turned to him, my mind racing. "Why me?" I asked. "Why show me this? I'm just one person. How can I make a difference?" Jesus knelt before me, his eyes filled with a love so deep it brought fresh tears to my eyes. "Because you have seen," he said, "and because you will speak. The truth carries its own power, Sarah. Share what you have seen. Trust me, and I will guide you." Before I could respond, the light around us began to fade. I felt a pulling sensation, as though the ground beneath me was giving way. "Wait!" I cried out, reaching for him. "I'm not ready." "You are ready," he said, his voice echoing in my mind. "Go and tell them what you have seen. I am with you, always." And with that, everything went dark. I woke up with a violent gasp, my chest heaving as though I'd been underwater for hours. The sterile air of the hospital filled my lungs, sharp and cold, in stark contrast to the warmth I had just left. The harsh fluorescent lights above burned my eyes, and for a moment I couldn't tell where I was, or if what I had experienced was even real. The room was in chaos. My husband was at my side, gripping my hand so tightly it hurt. Tears streamed down his face as he whispered my name over and over, his voice trembling with disbelief. My mother, who had been kneeling in prayer by the bed, let out a cry of joy so loud it startled the nurses rushing in to check my vitals. "She's back!" one of the nurses shouted. "We've got a pulse!" The doctors flooded the room, their faces pale with shock. I could hear their hurried voices, snippets of words like impossible and unprecedented, but I didn't care about any of that. I was alive, but I was different. Something inside me had shifted, and the weight of what I had seen pressed against my chest, urgent and unrelenting. My husband leaned in close, his tears dripping onto my hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice cracking. "You're alive. Oh my God, you're alive." I turned to him, my vision still blurry, my throat dry. "I saw him," I whispered, my voice hoarse. His brow furrowed. "Saw who, honey?" "Jesus," I said, tears filling my eyes. "I was with him. He showed me something." The room went silent, the only sound the steady beeping of the heart monitor. My mother stepped closer, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. "What are you saying, Sarah?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You saw Jesus?" I nodded, the memory of his face, his voice, his presence, still vivid in my mind. "He told me to come back," I said. "He told me I have a message." The days that followed were a blur. The doctors ran test after test, unable to explain what had happened. My heart had stopped for nearly 10 minutes. By all medical reasoning, I should have been gone, or at the very least, brain damaged. But I wasn't. I was completely fine, healthier than I had been in years. The leukemia that had ravaged my body? Gone. The doctors called it a miracle, but I knew the truth. It was a miracle. As I recovered, I couldn't stop thinking about the vision. The lines of people taking the mark of the beast, their eyes going blank, their souls stripped away. The glowing book of life, the names etched in golden light, and the one name that stood out, Donald Trump. It all felt so huge, so far beyond anything I could comprehend. How was I supposed to tell people about something like this? Who would believe me? The first time I shared my story was with my family. We were sitting in the living room, the lights dim, the house quiet, except for the soft ticking of the clock. I told them everything: the light, Jesus, the mark, the book of life. As I spoke, my voice trembled, not because I was unsure, but because I felt the weight of the truth pressing down on me. My husband listened, his hand gripping mine tightly, his face a mix of awe and fear. My mother wept silently, nodding along as if she already knew what I was going to say. But my father, always the skeptic, leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Sarah," he said slowly, "are you sure this wasn't just, a dream? Maybe a hallucination?" I looked him in the eye, my voice steady. "It wasn't a dream, Dad. I was there. I saw him. I felt his presence. And I saw what's coming." "What's coming?" my sister asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, the memory of the vision flooding back. "The mark," I said. "It's real. It's coming. And it's not what people think. It won't look evil. It'll look good, like something meant to help us, protect us. But it's a lie. Once people take it, they'll lose themselves. They'll lose their souls." The room fell silent, the weight of my words sinking in. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "And what about Donald Trump?" he asked, his tone skeptical. "You said Jesus mentioned him. What does he have to do with this?" I hesitated, the memory of that moment in the vision still fresh. "I don't know exactly," I admitted, "but his name was in the book of life. Jesus said he has a role to play in what's coming. We're supposed to pray for him, for all the people who will stand against the deception." My father shook his head, clearly struggling to process what I was saying. But my mother reached across the table, taking my hand in hers. "Sarah," she said softly, "I believe you. And if Jesus sent you back with this message, then we have to listen." Word of my story spread quickly. At first, it was just family and close friends who came to hear it. Then it was neighbors, church members, even strangers who had heard about the miracle of my recovery. People gathered in our home, their faces filled with hope, fear, and curiosity as I shared my experience. Some wept openly. Others sat in stunned silence. But no one left unchanged. Not everyone believed me, of course. There were skeptics, people who dismissed my story as a side effect of the illness or a product of my imagination. But that didn't matter. I wasn't here to convince everyone. I was here to tell the truth. One Sunday, I was invited to speak at our church. The sanctuary was packed, people standing in the aisles and spilling out into the lobby. As I stood at the pulpit, looking out at the sea of faces, I felt a wave of fear. What if I said the wrong thing? What if no one believed me? But then I remembered Jesus' words. Speak from your heart. Share what you have seen. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I told them about the golden light, the love I had felt in Jesus' presence, the vision of the mark of the beast. I told them about the people lining up, their souls stripped away, and the book of life with Donald Trump's name glowing in its pages. "Jesus sent me back to warn you," I said, my voice steady despite the tears streaming down my face. "The mark is coming. It will look like salvation, but it's deception. Stay close to him. Trust in God, not in the promises of the world." The room was silent as I finished, the weight of my words settling over the crowd. Then, one by one, people began to stand. Some came forward to pray, their faces streaked with tears. Others simply knelt where they were, their hands clasped tightly as they whispered prayers. As I stepped down from the pulpit, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I didn't know what would happen next, but I knew I had done what Jesus had asked. I had shared the truth. And that was enough. For now. As weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of my story began to grow in ways I never anticipated. What started as small gatherings in my home and speaking at my local church soon transformed into something much larger. People from other towns began reaching out, desperate to hear the message firsthand. Some sent letters, others called, and a few even showed up at my door, their eyes filled with questions and hope. It wasn't just believers who were drawn to the story. Skeptics, too, began to show up, not to mock, but to listen. There was something about the conviction in my voice, the raw truth of what I had experienced, that seemed to stir something deep in their souls. Even those who didn't fully believe couldn't deny the passion and urgency with which I spoke. But with the growing attention came a heavier burden. More and more, people began asking the same question. When will the mark of the beast come? At first, I didn't know how to answer. Jesus hadn't given me a timeline, only a warning. But as I prayed about it, I began to understand what he wanted me to say. It's not about when, I told a crowd one evening, my voice steady despite the lump in my throat. It's about being ready. The mark won't appear as something evil. It will look like the answer to all our problems: convenience, safety, unity. But those who take it will lose something far greater than they can imagine. That's why we must stay close to him, now more than ever. The time to prepare isn't tomorrow, it's today. The crowd was silent, their faces a mix of fear and determination. Afterward, an older man approached me, his hands trembling as he clutched a Bible to his chest. "Sarah," he said, his voice quivering, "do you really think it's coming in our lifetime?" I looked into his eyes, seeing the weight of his question, the fear of what might lie ahead. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I know this. Every day, the world moves closer to the deception Jesus warned me about. And when it comes, we have to be ready. That's why I'm sharing this message, not to scare people, but to prepare them." One night, after speaking at a packed event in a nearby city, I sat alone in my hotel room, exhausted but unable to sleep. I stared out the window at the city lights, my mind racing. The visions of the mark, the book of life, and Donald Trump's name kept playing over and over in my mind. Why had Jesus shown me his name? What role did he have in all of this? I decided to pray, pouring out my doubts and fears to God. "Lord," I whispered, tears streaming down my face, "why did you choose me for this? I'm just one person. How can I possibly make a difference? And what does Donald Trump's name mean? What am I supposed to do with that?" As I sat in the quiet of the room, a sense of peace washed over me, the kind of peace that only comes from him. A thought entered my mind, clear and unmistakable. "Trust me. You don't need all the answers. Just keep going." The next morning, I woke to a phone buzzing with notifications. A news story had broken. Donald Trump had given a speech the night before, and in it, he had called for a return to faith and prayer in America. The coincidence or divine timing left me stunned. Was this what Jesus meant? Was Trump's role in this greater than anyone could see? That night, as I spoke to another crowd, I shared the moment. "I don't fully understand what Donald Trump's role is," I said, my voice echoing in the hushed auditorium. "But Jesus showed me his name for a reason. Maybe it's a reminder that even the most unlikely people can be used for his purposes. We need to pray, not just for Trump, but for all leaders, for all those who have the power to influence the world." After the event, a woman approached me, her eyes brimming with tears. "Sarah," she said, her voice shaking, "your story has changed my life. I've been so caught up in fear, so worried about what's coming, but hearing you speak has reminded me to trust in God. No matter what happens, I know he's in control." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that this journey wasn't just about warning people. It was about giving them hope. The mark of the beast, the deception, it was terrifying. Yes, but Jesus had also shown me the way out, staying close to him, trusting in his word, and refusing to be swayed by the promises of the world. As the months passed, the story continued to spread. Some dismissed it as nonsense, others called it a miracle, and a few even claimed it was a warning directly from God. But no matter what people believed, one thing was clear. The message had struck a chord. One evening, as I prepared to speak to yet another crowd, I felt a familiar sense of nervousness creeping in. I stepped backstage, closed my eyes, and whispered a prayer. Lord, let your words be heard tonight, not mine, but yours. The event was unlike any I had ever experienced. People of all ages, backgrounds, and beliefs filled the room, their faces etched with a mix of anticipation and reverence. As I stood at the podium, I felt his presence beside me, steadying me, guiding me. I'm not here to scare you, I began, my voice calm but firm. I'm here to tell you the truth. Jesus sent me back for a reason, and that reason is you. The time is coming when we will all face a choice that will define our souls. Stay close to him, trust in him, and no matter what the world offers, remember this: nothing is worth more than your soul. As the crowd rose to their feet in applause, I felt a surge of peace unlike anything I'd ever known. This was my purpose, my mission, my calling. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't need them. All I needed was faith. The same faith that had carried me through my darkest hours and brought me back to share this message. And so I kept going, trusting him every step of the way,